I never thought my marriage would feel this fragile. Megan and I had been together for 8 years, 5 of those as husband and wife. From the outside, we looked solid. I was a software engineer with a decent salary, and she worked part-time as a dental hygienist, spending the rest of her time volunteering at local events. We had a modest but beautiful home, 2 cats, and dreams of one day adding kids to the mix. But lately, something was off. It started small. Megan used to tell me every detail of her day, from the boring patients she had to the new recipes she wanted to try. Now, her answers were short and vague. "How was work?" I'd ask. "Fine," she'd say with a distracted smile, her eyes darting back to her phone. She had started dressing differently too, more heels, more makeup, even on days she claimed she was just running errands. When I tease her about looking like she was going on a date, she'd laugh it off, but the laugh didn't reach her eyes. The first real crack appeared one Saturday afternoon. We were supposed to look at cars because Megan's old sedan had been acting up. I figured we'd hit a couple of dealerships, take a few test drives, and go home. But at the last minute, she said she'd rather go alone. "I don't want you to feel pressured," she said with a smile that seemed a little too rehearsed. "Besides, I know what I want, and you always get stressed about salespeople." I let it go. Maybe she was right. I wasn't a fan of the back and forth haggling at dealerships, so I stayed home and caught up on some work. When she returned that evening, she was glowing. Not the usual Megan smile I knew, but a different kind of radiance, like she was buzzing from something she wasn't telling me. "Did you find something?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, actually," she said, hanging her purse with a little extra sway in her hips. "I met this amazing manager at Westfield Motors. His name's Dean. He showed me a few cars that would be perfect for me." She paused, almost like she was reliving the moment. "He was really helpful, super nice." Dean. The name hung in the air like an echo. Over the next week, Megan was suddenly more alive. She was texting more, smiling at her phone, humming to herself as she got ready in the morning. When I asked about it, she'd say, "Oh, just talking to Trish, her best friend." But when I passed by her while she was texting, she'd tilt the screen away, a little too quickly. I started to notice more excuses. Late shifts at the dental clinic. Extra errands she had to run. Even when she was home, she seemed distant, like her body was in our living room but her mind was somewhere far away. The next weekend, she told me she was going back to the dealership to finalize some details on a financing plan. "Do you want me to come with you?" I asked. No, she said quickly. "It's just paperwork. Boring stuff. I'll be back in a couple of hours." She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her purse, and left. Something in my gut told me to follow her. I hated myself for even thinking it, but the doubt was eating at me. So, I waited 10 minutes, then grabbed my keys and drove to Westfield Motors. I parked across the street and watched. There she was, stepping out of her car in a fitted sundress I hadn't seen before. And there was Dean, tall, broad-shouldered, with a smile too charming for his own good. I saw him place his hand on her back as he led her inside the showroom. She didn't flinch. In fact, she leaned into it. I stayed in the car for nearly an hour, watching through the glass windows. They weren't just talking about cars. Their heads were close, their laughter too soft, too personal. At one point, Dean brushed a strand of her hair behind her ear, and she didn't push him away. When she finally came out, she wasn't alone. Dean walked her to her car, standing just a little too close. He said something that made her laugh, then he glanced around the lot before leaning down. My stomach dropped as I saw him kiss her cheek, just a whisper away from her lips. She looked up at him with a smile I hadn't seen in months. When she got home later, Megan was all sweetness, like nothing had happened. She told me the financing would take a little longer and that she'd have to go back next week. I nodded, keeping my voice steady, but inside, a storm was brewing. That night, she fell asleep easily. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much of my marriage was already gone. After that night, everything felt different. I didn't say a word, but my silence became its own weapon. I started noticing details I would have missed before: the way she checked her phone with an eagerness she never showed for my messages, the subtle glow in her cheeks when she came back from errands, the faint scent of cologne on her clothes that wasn't mine. I told myself I needed proof before confronting her. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe the kiss I saw was just an innocent gesture. But deep down, I already knew. The following week, Megan said she needed to finalize the paperwork for the car again. Same story, same dealership. I nodded and even offered to come along, testing her reaction. She hesitated just long enough for me to see the flicker of panic in her eyes before covering it with a smile. "Oh, honey, it's just signing documents. I don't want you to sit through all that boring stuff," she said, brushing my arm lightly. So, I let her go. 10 minutes later, I followed. This time, I didn't stay in the car. I parked a few blocks away and walked toward the dealership on foot, keeping to the shadows. Through the large glass windows of the showroom, I saw them again. Dean was leaning casually against a sleek black SUV, his arms crossed, that same easy smile on his face. Megan was standing close, too close, her fingers lightly grazing the sleeve of his suit jacket as she laughed at something he said. It wasn't just flirtation anymore. There was intimacy in the way they looked at each other. After a while, Dean placed his hand gently on the small of her back and guided her toward the office in the corner of the dealership. I watched as they disappeared inside, the blinds closing behind them. My chest tightened like a vice. I waited. Minutes ticked by: 10, 20, 30. Too long for paperwork. When they finally emerged, her hair was slightly tousled, and she was carrying her purse in that awkward way women do when they've just, well, you know. Dean was grinning like a man who had won something. I turned away before they could see me, my mind spinning. That night, she came home glowing again, humming softly as she put away her bag. She noticed me staring at her. "What?" she asked with a laugh, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile. "Did everything go well?" "Yeah, just some extra paperwork. I think I'll have the car by next week." She kissed my cheek like it was any other day, then went upstairs to shower. I sat in the kitchen for a long time, my hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, staring at nothing. Over the next few days, I became more of a ghost in my own home. I went through the motions: work, meals, small talk, but inside, I was unraveling. I couldn't bring myself to confront her yet. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the tiny, stupid hope that I was wrong, that I'd wake up and find this was just some paranoid nightmare. But it got worse. One evening, Megan announced she was going to meet Trish for drinks. Trish, her best friend, was always the perfect alibi. I nodded, acting casual, but as soon as she left, I checked the location tracker I'd quietly installed on her phone the night after I saw them at the dealership. She wasn't at Trish's. She wasn't at a bar. She was at a hotel. My hands trembled as I stared at the map on my screen. I didn't even think. I just grabbed my keys and drove. When I arrived, I parked across the street from the hotel entrance and waited. 20 minutes later, I saw her. Megan stepped out of the lobby with Dean by her side. She looked radiant. Her hair was still slightly damp, her dress clinging in a way that told me exactly what had happened inside. Dean reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. She smiled at him the way she used to smile at me. They stood by his car for a moment. He leaned down and kissed her softly, and she kissed him back. Not a stolen, guilty peck. A real kiss. Something inside me broke then. I drove home ahead of her, numb. When she walked through the door an hour later, she was cheerful, carrying a small shopping bag as if she'd been out with friends. "Hey, babe," she said, hanging up her coat. "You won't believe how crazy Trish was tonight. She's thinking about moving to Chicago." I didn't hear the rest. My mind was replaying the image of her lips on his, her laugh, her glow. That night, she curled up next to me in bed like nothing was wrong. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, realizing I was living with a stranger. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her with anger, not yet. I needed more than my own eyes. I needed proof that would leave her no room to lie, no chance to twist the truth. So, I called an old college buddy of mine, Eric, who now worked as a private investigator. I think my wife is cheating on me, I said quietly. And I need you to find out everything. He didn't hesitate. Give me a week. And that was the start of the end. The week waiting for Eric's report felt like slow torture. Every time Megan left the house, every smile she gave me, every casual brush of her hand against mine felt rehearsed, hollow. My stomach churned when I imagined where she was really going. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake next to her, staring into the darkness, thinking about Dean's hands where mine used to be. Finally, Eric called. "I've got everything you need," he said. His tone was heavy, like he knew the weight of what he was about to hand me. I met him the next morning at a small cafe. He slid a plain manila envelope across the table. Inside were photos: Megan and Dean at the dealership, at the hotel, kissing in his car, holding hands like a couple in love. There were even time-stamped videos from hotel security cameras, proof so undeniable it felt like a punch to the chest. "She's been seeing him for at least 6 weeks," Eric said quietly. "Mostly hotels and his office." "Sorry, man." I stared at the photos, numb. There was Megan, laughing in Dean's arms, her face lit with a happiness I hadn't seen in months. I wanted to feel rage, but all I felt was a deep, hollow ache. When I got home that evening, she was in the kitchen, humming softly as she chopped vegetables for dinner. She turned when she heard me come in, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Hey, babe," she said. "You're home early." I was just about to. "Stop," I said. My voice came out flat, detached. "We need to talk." She froze, the knife hovering above the cutting board. "Oh, Kay?" I set the envelope on the table between us. "Open it." Her eyes darted to the envelope, then back to me. She hesitated, then slowly opened it. The moment she saw the photos, the color drained from her face. She didn't even try to deny it. She just sank into the chair, her hands trembling as she flipped through the images. "Please." "I can explain," she whispered. "Explain what?" My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay calm. "Explain how you lied to me, how you kissed another man while telling me you were out with friends. Explain how you smiled at him the way you used to smile at me." Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "Stop," I said, holding up a hand. "I don't want excuses. I just want the truth. Did you sleep with him?" She swallowed hard. Her silence was answer enough. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind that comes when your world shatters and there's nothing left but bitter disbelief. "So all the nights you said you were working late, all the times you said you were with Trish." She covered her face with her hands. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry?" I echoed. "You're sorry you got caught. That's what you're sorry for." "No," she cried, her voice breaking. "Dean, he made me feel." I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing through the kitchen. "Don't you dare say he made you feel alive. Don't you dare tell me you did this because of something I didn't give you. I was here. I loved you. I trusted you. And you threw it away for a car salesman." She flinched at my words, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never meant to hurt you. It started with the car, and then we talked, and I felt seen in a way I hadn't in so long. I thought I could stop it, but..." I turned away, unable to look at her anymore. "You should have come to me. You should have told me you were unhappy. Instead, you lied. You betrayed me." "I still love you," she said desperately. "I swear I do. Dean doesn't mean what you think, he's just..." "Enough," I said coldly. "You love the way he makes you feel. But you don't love me, not anymore. If you did, you wouldn't have done this." She stood then, reaching for me, but I stepped back. "Please," she whispered. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling, I can end things with him." "No," I said quietly. It's already over. You just didn't have the courage to tell me. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I could see the realization sink into her eyes. This wasn't a fight we'd recover from. I'll pack my things, I said finally, my voice steady even though my insides felt like they were crumbling. You can stay here for now. I'll figure out the rest later. She sobbed, sinking to the floor, but I didn't stay to watch. I went upstairs, grabbed a bag, and packed just enough to get me through the next few days. Before I walked out the door, I paused. She was still in the kitchen, clutching the photos, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. For a moment, I remembered the woman I married, the woman who laughed with me on long road trips, who held my hand during storms, who promised me forever. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. I left without another word. 3 months later, I was living in a small apartment across town. Divorce papers were in motion. Megan had tried calling, texting, even showing up at my door, but I never let her in. I learned that she stayed with Dean for a while after I left, but it didn't last. Maybe he got bored. Maybe she realized too late what she'd lost. I didn't care anymore. The pain was still there, but it was dull now, replaced by something quieter, a strange kind of peace. I knew I deserved better than being someone's second choice. And as I stood on my balcony one evening, watching the city lights flicker, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope.